Okay, we're on the
This
record.
is a meeting of the Assembly Ethics and Election Committee. Let's go on the table, identify ourselves for the record.
Barbara Jones, Municipal Clerk.
Amanda Moser, Deputy Clerk.
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
Dick Trainee, Assembly.
And we know that Chair Ernie Hall asked to
Otherwise
be
engaged.
asked to be excused.
Yeah. So the first item here is alternative voting methods. Subsidy Kenai.
Yeah, so we, at the last meeting, discussed alternative voting methods, and we sort of had some things that I was going to look into. So one thing that I've given to the committee members is the ordinance that the Kenai Peninsula looked at to switch to by-mail elections.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have had precincts that have been by-mail for a significant amount of time. And so we were reviewing what the turnout was in the precincts that were by mail and the ones that weren't. So the ones that are highlighted are precincts that are by mail, and this is the 2012 and the 2013 history. And you can see that all the by mail precincts that they currently have a low number of registered voters. So I went ahead and I did some math just to look at the turnout for the precincts that were by mail versus the regular precincts. So in 2013, the voter turnout was 20.78% for all of the Kenai Peninsula Borough, but for the by mail elections, it was 19%. So it was a little bit lower in that year. And in 2012, the voter turnout was 13.35% for the whole Kenai Peninsula Borough, and for the by-mail precincts, it was 16%. So that was higher in that year.
But isn't it a problem all across this country, Amanda, with people not voting? I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's vote by mail or showing up to vote. We have a
Yeah.
problem in this country with voter turnout.
It would be interesting to see too, when they switch to all by mail, what the impact that has just across the whole region. I think part of my thoughts with moving forward with the rollout is sort of the conversation that we'll begin to have with the residents of Anchorage about voting, and I think that that potentially also could engage people in the process.
Well, and I just by accident, I mentioned this a little bit last night when we were having dinner, was at the Moose Institute having pizza, and just so happened one of the people that I was introduced to, I was out with a friend of mine, actually was working for the state of Oregon when they went to vote by mail.
Oh, very interesting.
And so one of the things he told me was that yes, during presidential elections they were up to the mid-80s in number of voters, and for gubernatorial elections they were in upper 60s and low 70s. But for municipal elections, if they weren't, really something contentious, or if it wasn't a mayor, election of the mayor, they were still, 25, 30%. It was an increase from 15 to 18%, which is what they had before, which is even lower than what we usually get. So it was an increase, but it wasn't, maybe the 50% or higher that everyone was hoping. So. I don't know whether it will work better here in Alaska. I don't know, but it's a possibility.
Yes, Barbara.
I think Mr. Trainee and Mr. Peterson, you both mentioned that by mail voting is not a panacea for increased voter turnout, and Amanda even mentioned engaging the public, and that's really what the issue is. They have to be interested in voting. I still think that the purpose of the discussion for alternative voting methods, we need to look at other issues like in the Kenai Peninsula Borough resolution, it talks about their remote locations, and you can see it's Moose Pass, Cooper Landing, and Hope.
Tyonek.
Right. And to some degree we have some of those issues, like with Indian and
Birchwood.
Birchwood. So those are issues for us too. But I think another issue why we want to look at alternative voting methods is our election workers.
Yeah.
You know, that we're aging them out. We're not getting younger people that are volunteering to work as election workers at the polling places. And right now we have 600. And it's just going to be really hard in the future to continue to do that. And I think we want to talk about engaging people where they're at. All of our kids, not yours, Amanda, but they're
Could be your
used,
age, Amanda.
they're used to electronics and things happening quickly. And I think that the current system, we just need to look at it and make sure that it's right for the future.
I think the vote by mail is one aspect. I think we need to get on to adding in vote by computers too, because you're right, the kids, if you can do on one of these things, they're willing to do it. Beyond that, they're not. Just gotta make it more convenient, easier for people to vote.
Mhm.
I mean, have the people still go into the booth to vote and go to the mail and see if we can get the computers to do it too. That way we hit them on the different methods they have to vote.
Well, and we were at the Bartlett a month or so ago, and,
Yeah.
and there was a presentation made, and we had one member of our organization that was very adamant about that there should always be polling locations for people to go vote in person, in public.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a minority, member of a minority group, and he felt it was extremely important for minorities to be able to be seen voting. Because, you know, some of us remember days when they weren't allowed to vote. And so that was the point he made, you know, very adamantly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Amanda, one question I've got for you. Can we explore with the state on how they have their My Alaska system working? Because, for example, as public officials, we can fire APOC stuff
Mm-hmm.
over My Alaska. You can put your primitive fund dividend in via My Alaska.
Right.
Do they have the capabilities or to vote using that sort of a system, or could we explore it with them?
Well, I think maybe something that would be interesting to look at outside the My Alaska is Barbara and I had a presentation on the voting by mail, and there was a component of it that allowed people to vote electronically. And that, because I'm not sure if the state is moving in this direction, but I think it might be interesting to explore other options that are available to allow someone to vote electronically, but not maybe specifically through the My Alaska. So if you would like me to explore
I would like
those-
to explore that. I don't
Okay.
care what's My Alaska. I'm just using that as
Mhm.
an example of where they have legal, like our APOC, it's a legal document. And we can sign that and we can submit it using that.
Well, and in 2012, about a month before the general election in November of that year, Gail from Newman and I announced that they were going to be experimenting with vote by computer. And so I know some people did in fact vote by computer that year. So you might want to check with the state to see if they have plans to increase that or improve that, or what kind of results they had from that. I know the question, of course, is security.
Yeah.
You know, can we prove that actually it's really John Smith that voted, you know, from John Smith's computer? And I know that, you know, the security on computers is getting better, but it's obviously not flawless. But neither would be vote by mail.
Yeah.
You know, someone could intercept, you know, mailed ballots and fake signatures and that type of thing.
So if you could explore that, Amanda, we'd appreciate it if you and Barbara could do that.
Okay.
I want to look at different methods to try and increase the voting.
Okay. That
And
sounds great.
Mail may not be it, but if we can hit mail, if we can hit in-person voting and computers, maybe we can start to get it back up again.
Right.
I mean, it's your generation we're talking about, Amanda. I
And
mean, you know better than we do because you're younger than the rest of us. I mean, you do everything as computers now, don't you, really?
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think one of Pete's comments that that I was gonna mention, I've lost it. Sorry, it'll come
A
back
senior
to me.
moment.
Well, and just another thing I mentioned when we were having dinner last night was that he told me that they weren't prepared when they first did the first all by mail thing in the election in Oregon. They were blown away and very surprised and weren't prepared for the number of ballots that were spoiled by crayons or
Oh.
coffee or
Dog
dogs.
bites.
You know, you name it. He says the paint, the gamut. And so it was between 2 and 3%.
Wow.
The people were asking for replacement ballots. And so, it's just.
I do remember what I was going to say when you commented about the person at the Bartlett Club that really wanted in-person voting. I noticed in the Kenai one that they did have absentee in-person locations. And you know, that I think is really important and it preserves the,
Tradition.
it
Tradition
does.
of going to
And I
vote.
think that that's really important. And it also allows, you know, it's said in their ordinance for people who somehow didn't get or lost their ballot or something like that. And then it gives the clerk's office a catch-all. You know, when someone says, I didn't get the ballot in the mail, well, great, you can go to one of the absentee in-person locations. You know, we wouldn't want to have to scramble and figure that out on election day.
Right.
So I think that that balance is what we're talking about. If we could do maybe some by mail and still have electronic and still have some in person, it would really
Well, you know,
appeal to everybody.
This country has made major changes in who's allowed to vote since we were founded.
Yeah.
I can remember when I was a kid, my great-grandmother telling me that she remembered the first time she was allowed to vote. She was born in 1870. She didn't get to vote until 1820 or early 1820.
1920 for the federal,
Who's
but
voting
what
in
state was she
1820?
from?
She was
Issues.
from Iowa.
Well, I was going to say, you know, Wyoming was the first state to allow women to vote, and that was probably in the 1800s. But otherwise, in federal elections,
But they
it
only
wasn't
had,
until
what, 9 or
1920.
10 women voting in Wyoming. There were that many women there at that time, were there?
But that's really interesting.
So we, you know, it's a funny, you know, historical things that, you know, your older relatives tell you and you don't think of anything about it at the time, and then later you go, oh, that really kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Women's Equality Day was yesterday, so that's the,
Was it 1920 that amendment was passed, the
1920.
19th Amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this one?
Nope.
Item 3 is the Board of Ethics update.
So, I have spoken with Lisa, and Lisa, on behalf of Barbara, assists with the Board of Ethics. And through a conversation with Ernie, we would like to get a monthly update from the Board of Ethics at this meeting. And so we had the conversation a little bit too close to their meeting, and so she wasn't able to connect with the Board of Ethics. But at the next meeting, we will be able to have a Board of Ethics update, either a member or potentially Lisa, or Lisa will pass the message on to me. So
Well, thank you.
we will be able to get that ethics component of the Ethics and Election
Good.
Committee.
Anything, Pete? Anything, Barbara? Okay. Moving on to item 4. Proposed ordinance, limited road service areas.
at a meeting last, it was probably in January or February, and Amanda did a work session for the assembly up in the mayor's conference room, and she had that map up there and showed you the map and the 42 ballots that we have for the municipal elections. And one of the reasons that we have 42 different ballot styles is because we have, is it 22 LRSAs, Amanda?
Yes.
So there are 22 local road improvement districts, and are they some local road and some rural road? So there's LRSAs or VRSAs. So what we know, and I one of my biggest concerns is one of the LRSAs has a odd little corner, and I'm really concerned that one LRSA ends up in a different precinct, and there's probably like a couple of houses that end up, and because they're in a different precinct than the rest of the LRSA, we end up having like one ballot for that little corner of that LRSA at that precinct.
Yeah,
And we order probably over 100 ballots for that tiny
That's the
little.
minimum order, isn't it?
Pardon?
They've got a minimum order.
It's 25, but we have to, have a ballot at all the locations.
Right.
It really complicates the ballot order because in one precinct, instead of just ordering 70% of registered voters for one ballot style, I have one precinct that has 13 ballot styles. So then I have to sort of break down into these small areas, how many people.
That's crazy.
So it's very challenging
and
to
you have
do.
to train the people to work at the polls, and so
You know which ballot to get
there's a
on.
lot of pressure on them to get the
We
right ballot.
have worked since 2010. We have created a very good system. So we work with our ballot printer and we work with a map printer, and we do color-coded ballots. We have stickers on the top of the ballot that correspond to a color on the map. So if you're in a split precinct, you walk into the precinct and the first person that you see is your map worker. The map worker will ask you to point out on the map where you live. This doesn't seem challenging, but it's probably one of the more challenging parts of this because, interestingly enough, a lot of people cannot identify where their house is on the map for various reasons, which is like one thing that you don't think about as a concern that now you have to sort of address of like, oh, somebody needs this further assistance finding their house. So they do.
Americans aren't good at geography.
It's usually men that have problems with it. They don't want to ask for help.
So, no comments on either one of those statements. But when they do find their area, and they live in the pink area, they're given a pink card, and then they go sign the precinct register, and then they get their ballot issuing card, and they take their pink card and their ballot issuing card to the ballot worker, who looks and gives them a pink. The ballot's not pink. There's a sticker at the top that they detach. We've worked very hard to create this system. It works relatively well, all things being equal. I mean, with
So
all
you
the
have
other
13
issues,
different colors?
you have to really stretch. So you have like bright yellow and a pale yellow. I mean, it is very
Light
challenging.
pink, dark pink. Yeah, that's
Right.
So what if, of course, obviously you can't have someone who's colorblind working with
Well,
that.
so it also corresponds to a number system because we did consider this. So the pink is also going to be in the 1 area, and the pink card has a 1 on it, and the ballot has a 1 on it too. So we did address that concern too. But as Barbara's going to say, a lot of these splits are caused by LRSAs. The other
Right.
things that the splits are caused by is the park service area, fire service area, road service area, police service area.
Right.
This
But-
is the low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
Of the,
Well,
so let's
we're-
kill off LRSAs.
So what we're proposing is the LRSAs are self-governed. They have a board of supervisors and they elect board members every year. So interestingly, with the assembly, there's no assembly members up for election in 2015, but I counted and there's still, it looks like about 31 LRSA seats. I think we had 33.
Yeah, how bad it is. Sometimes no one runs for it, so they write a name in.
Oh, yeah.
So-
not sometimes.
No,
every
Every
year.
time. And on occasion, as chairman, I've had to flip a coin. Because one person will get two votes, the other person gets 2 votes.
And
We
they
have to flip
both
a
want to
coin
serve.
To then decide who gets it.
So if you lose the toss, you get the job? Or
Well-
It doesn't pay anything.
So I've calculated it for 2014 based on the statistics that Amanda gave me. 74% of the LRSA seats had one candidate declared for the position. So that person got the seat. Of course, there could have been a write-in, but we don't count the write-ins unless the write-in would have equaled more than their total, and that didn't happen. So 74% had one. 19% had 0. So 19% of those seats had no one running. And 3% or 1 LRSA had 2 candidates that declared.
And that, I think that the year before we did not have any candidates that had 2 people running. It's only happened twice since I've been doing elections.
So now, of the 33%, the 19% that had no declared candidates, those have to be counted by hand. So what the issue is you've just heard about the cost that we have with the color coding. So there's probably an increased cost from our ballot printer. We have 1 extra worker at those precincts because we need the map worker. And then in addition to that, we have to hand count those ballots. So it's costly for us. And the other part is the candidates have to declare with APOC. So you all know what it's like to have to declare with APOC, but for them, most of them are exempt because they don't raise any funds.
Right.
So it's still problematic for them. And some of them, we have heard, the reason that they run a write-in campaign is because then they don't have to file with APOC. So it's sort of like this APOC filing requirement is actually perpetuating more work for us.
Right.
And once we go through the write-in ballots, so this year we had 6 seats that had no candidate. So we had to identify all the precincts that limited road service was in. And some of the limited road service areas cross into multiple precincts. And then because a lot of the seats came down to 1 or 2 votes, we also, we opened the ballots on that were run through the AccuVote on election day. But then we also had to go back through the absentee and question ballots because they all, we looked at the results on there and we saw that there was, 1 or 2 candidates. So we had to go through various ballots to identify. And so then we identified all the candidates who had received votes. We identified who received the top number of votes. And then we had to identify, who is this person? Do they live in this area? Are they a registered voter? And that in itself is sort of, I am acquiring some skills that I could translate into being a private detective when I'm doing these things.
But then the last part of it is she has to call them and see if they're willing to serve.
All right.
So we certified the election on April 22nd, but we didn't certify these LRSAs until probably June or July.
I think May this year.
May.
June and
Okay,
July,
sorry.
Other years has been longer.
So, this is the solution that we have the boards elect these people so that we don't have to have them elected at
Well, she has a solution over there.
Okay, all right.
We
I'm just
have
asking.
lots
No,
of
she's got a
options,
solution.
but I think we have to do something. So I think there's a couple of things, and having the boards elect them certainly could be a possibility. I didn't really think about that. What I think I was asked to do after the work session was we have to put it on the LRSA's ballot. So the LRSA has to vote. And so the way I have it proposed is that shall the limited road service area be governed by a board of supervisors nominated by the board, appointed by the mayor, and approved by the assembly. So that's the way vacancies are filled on the boards, and that's in the code.
Okay.
And so I was just thinking,
That way it goes forward, the board then recommends good choice to mayor, who then gives it to someone. And simply because the mayor nominates and doesn't really have to approve them. So checks and balances put in this whole.
Sure.
so that's one idea. I guess another, and if the board elected them, that could be the same thing. So that's one part of it, and I think one of the other parts that was mentioned at the meeting was charging the LRSAs for election services, which obviously you can see are not insubstantial. I think, so I don't know if that would be part of this, but that would be one option that we could start. And I noticed it in the Kenai ordinance. It says that they can charge service areas for election costs, and it's really detailed. It says it can be audited, you know, that we have to keep it for a certain amount of time, and,
Okay, why are we charging them now?
well, we're not, but I think we could.
Okay.
Well,
So-
but, I
Sorry.
mean, would it be legal for us to charge, or would we have to pass an ordinance to make it legal for us to charge them right now?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
That's a question we need to ask Julia or Dennis
Mhm.
and find out if we have that option, because it's expensive to keep producing what they do, the amount of ballots and everything. It's time
Well, and I think the
consuming.
nomination idea it might eliminate the expense for either the boards or the meeting.
Exactly.
So-
If you do the process by appointment, there's no charge from the clerk's office for an election because you're
It's an
not.
election.
Yeah.
I think that cuts straight to the chase.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I said, the chair knows that I'm the chair of the assembly. He's the one that asked after the work session for us to do this. And I've got this proposal, and I'm pretty close to getting it to him for review. And then we're talking about whether to involve Julia or the municipal attorney's office or both of them, and how to go forward.
Well, Dennis Wheeler is the one that would have to defend us in court. So, I mean, Julia's nice, and I appreciate the work she does, but if we're sued, Dennis is the one who's going to have to go to court.
And Dennis and Dean do most of the election work, so maybe I'll just whip it up there.
If you would.
Okay.
And are we anticipating any pushback on this? Would
This
someone
will
be
last,
upset
yeah.
that they weren't gonna be able to see their name on the ballot or something?
Did you know Amanda and I have this philosophy of the 31 that were up, if we end up with 5 or 10 less, it would be great. So
And then we could look at charging the ones that choose to remain.
right. So we would just be happy with, just even a few taking it. So it's not, for us, we don't need 100%. If some of them are wedded to being elected and, that's okay with us. We would just like fewer of them.
So it's up, so we could give them the choice. You either go through the appointment process, or if you want to do the elections, you will pay for the election.
In the future, I think that's probably fair enough.
That makes sense.
No problem with it.
And one other option that we've talked about is converting them to a by-mail election. The problem is there's so many of them, and they're so small
The
that
cost would be
very,
substantial.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the map, and it was a jigsaw puzzle. And I
Exactly.
thought, oh my God.
I've been at this for a few years. So from my perspective, go with this.
okay,
Please bring it forward. I'm willing to support it in front of the assembly. We can defend it. Let's try and get this done.
okay.
It's a money saving, hassle saving.
And
Yeah.
it gives them full representation up on the hillside, but it solves this problem of people not wanting to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no election involved. The board can get together, appoint their candidates, send on the mayor can select his, it comes to assembly. We decide if we want to support them or not, and then it's done.
Well, and if somebody was mad at a neighbor up there, they could say, hey, we're gonna put this guy, and Phil, and all of a sudden he gets a call and I'm elected, he's going, oh, I don't want the job.
I've actually heard, I have friends that live on Hillside who joke about.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me those things.
I mean,
Years ago, we had a surveyor that was drunk on the hillside. Seriously. And some of the lines don't go where they're supposed to go. There's a lot of people up there whose garages are not on their property.
I had a
Bear Valley.
duplex that was built in 73 or 4, and when the original guy did the as-built, he had the lines here, but when somebody came back and did them a few years later, he found out that the guy was off by 3 or 4 feet. And so all of a sudden, my setbacks were too close to the neighbor,
Uh-oh.
So I got to go in front of the zoning commission.
What do you mean? So is that all on this one?
That's it.
Subject? Okay. Well, we got items participation. So Eugene, anything from you?
Permission to speak?
Well, it's highest participation.
Permission to speak?
You're the audience.
Okay, just a couple comments. The meetings today, last month, it shows in the records the meeting was canceled. The previous meeting of this committee on June, was there a meeting? Because I'm not seeing any tape on the normal site where these tapes are on the website.
We'll have to find out for you, I don't know.
Okay,
I
and
remember going to the meeting.
the last part is brief. Whoever typed this says August 28th, today's August 27th.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry about that.
And then the last part
I thought I had printed the
is,
right one. Because you pulled the right one.
you discussed proposed ordinance under road service areas here today. The ordinance is not out yet. Is there a draft? Because I noticed it was coming before you, or was it just a verbal presentation?
These are
Because
just ideas we're kicking around. There's nothing been written yet, Eugene.
nothing's been written. Okay.
Just kicking ideas.
And is there an expected date when this might be out?
I don't know, probably within a couple months.
Okay, and it's just the last, just to refer back to the first part is, did you have a meeting in June?
I'll have to look back at the record.
I wouldn't know.
I'm not seeing any tape, that's the only thing.
I bounce around with meetings, I don't know.
Okay,
Sorry.
and that's it.
Thank you, Eugene. We're at item 6, adjournment. Anything else? Discussion?
Move to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thanks for being here, Rebecca.
Thank you.